Hello friends, dear students, my colleagues and the members of the fraternity of physiology and medicine. After some gap, now I have again resumed the recordings of various videos. So now onward, there will be regular uploading of various conceptual videos. Right, so today's topic for this particular video is the auto-regulation of blood flow. Why did I select this topic is because a few days ago I received a suggestion as to discuss and elaborate on auto-regulation of the coronary blood flow. So I thought maybe first we'll discuss the concept in general as the auto-regulation of blood flow to a particular organ, and then we can later on discuss the coronary blood flow in detail. I have already uploaded a few videos related to the coronary blood flow, particularly this part we will discuss in the subsequent video, the auto-regulation of the coronary blood flow. Yes, so let's begin. What is the concept? Now I was thinking about taking some example to which all of us can relate, and that the example of the smartphones maybe. You know, smartphones, they very smartly go into power saving mode or battery saving mode when the battery percentage remaining is very less. So somehow I thought quite parallel is the example of the auto regulation, although not exactly like that, but yes, the organs behave smartly, we can put it that way, that the organs behave smartly to regulate their own blood flow in the face of changes in the systemic blood pressure. So there would be changes in the blood pressure and therefore the blood flow can change to various organs, but there are few organs that are able to maintain their blood flow constant, and that's the concept. You know, it is indicative therefore of the local blood flow. We are referring to the local blood flow to an organ. So it is limited to that particular organ, this particular concept. Why do I say that? Is because let's take the example, a person performing muscular exercise. Now what's going to happen is the skeletal muscles involved in the exercise, they are demanding extra blood flow. So muscle is demanding the extra blood flow and therefore that has to be diverted from somewhere, and therefore some other organ has to divert its own blood flow to the skeletal muscle, and all this diversion and taking the blood flow somewhere else is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. So an external agency is involved in the regulation of blood flow to various organs, but over here what we are referring to is some smart organs which can regulate their own blood flow. Even though the pressure is changing, blood flow to other organs is changing, but these organs will be able to maintain their own blood flow, and that is the concept. So it is defined as the inherent or intrinsic ability of an organ to maintain a constant blood flow in the face of in the presence of changes in the perfusion pressure, right? So if the systemic blood pressure or the arterial blood pressure is changing, therefore the perfusion pressure into that organ is also changing, and yet the blood flow is regulated by that organ for itself. So let's say there was a rapid increase in the arterial blood pressure. Well, I mentioned it here, rapid. What I mean is, we are not looking at some long-term regulation. We are not looking at some chronic phase. We are talking about an acute phase, a short-term change, a short-term regulation, right? So a rapid increase in the arterial blood pressure would initially increase the blood flow for a few seconds. The blood pressure has increased, the systemic blood pressure, and therefore the perfusion pressure into that organ has increased. Therefore the blood flow will increase instantaneously, but within less than a minute or so, within next 30 to 60 seconds, the blood flow will return to normal or the original level, even though the blood pressure continues to remain high. Getting the point? The blood pressure increased, therefore the blood flow has increased into a particular organ. The organ is capable of regulating its own blood flow. We are talking about autoregulation. So blood flow has increased instantaneously, but within next 30 to 60 seconds, the blood flow will return to the normal level or the original level, although the blood pressure and the perfusion pressure remains high, remains elevated. So that is described as the autoregulation, the concept of autoregulation. The blood pressure will remain altered, but the blood flow which was altered will within a minute or so, it will come back to the normal level. That's how the blood flow can be maintained by these particular organs. Now, if you have to draw it diagrammatically, you can see here the perfusion pressure decreased. The perfusion pressure decreased because of a decrease in the arterial blood pressure. So, what happens next is the blood flow also has decreased. But then the blood flow returned to the normal, although the perfusion pressure continues to remain low. Let me just explain again. This is a perfusion pressure and you can see parallel drawn is the blood flow. So, when the perfusion pressure dropped because of a decrease in the arterial blood pressure, instantly the blood flow also dropped to a particular organ. This is about a particular organ which is capable of regulating the blood flow, its own blood flow. So, the blood flow decreased, but then it came back to the normal, it came back to the original level, even though the perfusion pressure remains low. So, that is the concept of autoregulation. The blood pressure will remain altered, but the blood flow to this organ will come back to its original level and will remain constant. So, many vascular beds exhibit this kind of the ability, particularly cerebral blood flow, coronary blood flow, renal blood flow, skeletal muscle blood flow even. These organs, they exhibit this ability. Why is it that these organs need this ability in the first place? Look, some of them are vital organs, brain, heart, kidney, and they cannot afford to have instantaneous or moment-to-moment changes in the blood pressure or rather blood flow. What I mean is, if the person is exercising or due to some other demand, the blood flow to some other organ is changing. Heart, brain, kidney, they need not divert their blood flow to that organ because these are vital organs. Take the example of brain. Brain is very, very prone to hypoxia, hypoxic injury. It's very sensitive to the hypoxia or ischemia, and therefore its blood flow needs to be kept constant under all circumstances. Even though the pressure is changing, systemic blood pressure, even though the perfusion pressure is changing in the brain itself, still it will regulate, it will maintain its constant blood flow because these are vital organs. So, therefore, it's necessary. Then, what is the usefulness of the autoregulation? How is it useful? Let's see it both ways, like increased pressure and increased blood flow, decreased pressure and decreased blood flow. Let's see on both ends of the spectrum. Suppose an organ is already having a good amount of blood flow, and then the blood pressure increases and therefore the blood flow to that organ increases further. Now that will be a waste, isn't it? Already the organ had enough blood flow coming to it, and then increased blood pressure, increased perfusion pressure would further increase blood flow to that organ, which is completely unnecessary, and it would be a wastage. So therefore, to prevent such a wastage, the blood flow will be regulated, and even though the blood pressure has increased, the organ, its blood supply will come back to the normal, right? There should not be an excessive flow and wastage. So that's one, wastage of perfusion is avoided. And and on the other hand, if there is a low blood pressure and therefore low perfusion pressure, then blood flow would reduce, blood flow will decrease. Now, as I mentioned already, there are some vital organs which cannot afford to have a low blood flow, and therefore, even if the blood pressure decreases, these organs will be able to maintain, will be able to sustain their own blood flows. So that is the usefulness of this concept of autoregulation. The organs, irrespective of the changes in perfusion pressure over a wide range, blood flow to the organ is held constant. Now, this wide range of the blood pressure is thought to be somewhere between 60 and 180 mm of Hg of the mean arterial blood pressure. We are not talking about systolic or diastolic, we are talking about mean arterial pressure. So, the lower range is 50 to 60 mm of Hg, the higher range is up to 180 mm of Hg. In that wide range, if the blood pressure is changed, let's say from 100 to 150, that's a massive change of blood pressure, and in an acute phase, the blood flow, it may increase initially to these organs, but then it will come back to normal, blood flow will be held constant. So, it's the change in the local vascular resistance. I mean, how does it happen? How the autoregulation happens, how the blood flow is maintained, is that there is change in the local vascular resistance. I mean, the vessels will constrict, the vascular resistance will increase, or the vessels will dilate in that organ, and the resistance will fall, and that's how the blood flow will change into that organ. So, if I have to draw a graph and illustrate how this concept works, let's say a graph that depicts the changes in blood pressure versus the changes in the blood flow and autoregulation of blood flow. So, let's say we are going to plot the blood flow against the blood pressure. So, 60, 100, 180, let's take a range. As I mentioned already that within this range, there will be a perfect autoregulation and constancy of the blood flow in these particular organs which we have mentioned. Right. So, the graph would appear something like this: up to 60, then 60 to 180, and then beyond 180. You will observe that many organs which obey Laplace's law, they follow this kind of a path. Right. So, even the blood vessels, they follow this kind of a path or this kind of a graph. Let's just explain this. Look, between 60 and 180 mm of Hg, the blood flow is being held constant. I mean, if the blood pressure on the horizontal axis, if the blood pressure goes from 100 to, let's say, 150 mm of Hg, blood flow is hardly changing. There's hardly any change in the blood flow. So, it's a flat portion of this graph. Beyond 180, you can see the graph is rising rapidly. That means what? That means from 180 to 190 mm of Hg or 200 mm of Hg, and the blood flow will increase tremendously. Below 60, you can see the graph. If the blood pressure decreases from 60 to 55 or 50, the blood flow will drop. So, there is a range. In this range, the blood flow will be held constant, the blood flow will be held normal, but beyond that range, the capacity for the auto regulation will be exceeded. That was the point that I was trying to make here. Right. Now, what are the possible mechanisms involved in the auto regulation? There are two important theories related to this, or the possible mechanisms: the myogenic theory and the metabolic theory. Two theories which have been universally accepted. Let's therefore discuss these theories. The myogenic theory. Myo is muscle. So naturally this is related to the muscle. Which muscle? The smooth muscle lining the blood vessels. The smooth muscle present in the wall of the blood vessels. And naturally, which blood vessels? Blood vessels within that particular organ which we are discussing, which has got the capacity to show autoregulation. So, myogenic theory, it entails the reaction of the smooth muscle lining the blood vessels. So, for instance, increased blood flow to an organ, there will be dilation of the blood vessels within that organ. Let's try to draw it by a flow chart. If there is an increased blood flow because of the vasodilation in that particular organ, now what happens is, this vasodilation will stretch the vessel wall. Here is a blood vessel and there is smooth muscle cells are being shown here diagrammatically. So, as the vessel is stretched, there is a stretch of the smooth muscle. When the vessel dilates, there will be stretch of these smooth muscle cells, and as a result of that, this vascular smooth muscle cell will contract. Due to that stretch of the vessel wall, the vascular smooth muscle cell will contract. You know, it opens calcium channels and calcium influx happens in these smooth muscle cells, the smooth muscle cells lining the blood vessel, and smooth muscle cells will contract, and thereby there will be vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction means the blood flow will be cut off. The blood flow will be decreased, not cut off, but blood flow will be decreased and brought back to the original level. You see, what was the starting point? There was increased blood flow because of the vasodilation. I mean, blood flow has increased and vessel has dilated, right? So, that vasodilation stretched the vessel wall, and that stretching of the vessel wall has caused these smooth muscle cells to contract. These smooth muscle cells will contract. There would be vasoconstriction. So, automatically the blood flow will be reduced due to the vasoconstriction. And therefore, it's quite an automatic mechanism. And that's the myogenic theory. So, this mechanism is most pronounced in the arterioles. So, stretch of the vessel wall, depolarization of the vascular muscle cell, VSMC, the vascular smooth muscle cell will depolarize because of that stretch, and this will result in influx of calcium into the smooth muscle cell. Calcium will trigger the contraction of that smooth muscle cell, resulting in vasoconstriction and decreased blood flow. So, according to the recent findings which channels are involved? The TRP channels are said to be involved in this. Transient receptor potential, that's a family of receptors and associated channels. So these TRP channels are thought to be associated in the myogenic mechanism. So what happens is increased pressure and increased stretch of the vessel wall, there would be increased activity of phospholipase C. We are talking about those smooth muscle cells lining the blood vessels. Increased activity of phospholipase C and therefore increased synthesis of dialkyl glycerol DAG. This would activate that TRP channel, the transient receptor potential family, TRP channel, and that channel will cause it's a cation channel. We have discussed it in some other video, and therefore you can refer to that video. These are the cation channels, the TRP channels. So they will cause depolarization of that vascular smooth muscle cell, and that depolarization, let's just try to draw it here. There was increased blood flow, vasodilation had occurred in the organ. So there was increased activity via the TRP channel, and this occurred because of the stretch of the vessel wall. So you see, there is a smooth muscle which is lining the vessel wall. What will happen is, in its membrane there is this TRP channel. This channel will open after the stretch, and before that this channel will depolarize, and depolarization will result in influx of calcium. There are L-type calcium channels also present in the wall of these smooth muscle cells. So in effect, eventually, first the stretch leading to depolarization, and that depolarization is caused by TRP channel, influx of cations through the TRP channel in these smooth muscle cells. Depolarization has caused opening of L-type voltage sensitive calcium channels. So because there is a depolarization, that voltage change will be sensed by these L-type voltage sensitive calcium channels, again in the membrane of these smooth muscle cells. And this calcium, it results in the smooth muscle contraction. So smooth muscle cells will contract and the vasoconstriction results. The blood flow will come back to normal, blood flow will be regulated. Well, that is the theory behind the myogenic mechanism for the regulation of blood flow. Well, as I mentioned Laplace's law just now, there would be a greater degree of contraction at higher pressures. I mean, if the pressure goes on increasing, systemic blood pressure increases, therefore perfusion pressure within the organ increases, there would be a greater degree of contraction of the blood vessel. Why is that? Why would there be that greater constriction of the blood vessel? Laplace's law. P is equal to 2T upon R. So T is equal to P into R. If if the pressure is equal to T upon R, then tension, and here we are talking about the wall tension, vessel wall tension, will be proportional to P into R. Easy? Yes. Now that is the wall tension T, the blood vessel wall tension T is proportional to the distending pressure. The vessel wall is distending with increased blood flow. So distending pressure, that is P, times the radius R of the vessel. Let me repeat this once again. If P is equal to T upon R, then T, the vessel wall tension, equals P into R, pressure into radius. Right. So, in order to maintain the stable wall tension, now imagine that the blood flow has to be held constant to that particular organ. What is required? What is the necessity? The vessel wall tension has to be held constant, right? Now, vessel wall tension T is equal to P into R, pressure into radius of the vessel, and P, the pressure, has increased. We already said that increased blood pressure and increased perfusion pressure. So, P is increasing. Let's just write it here. P is equal to T upon R or 2T upon R. So, P is directly proportional to tension, inversely related to the radius. And therefore, T is equal to P into R, pressure times the radius. T is wall tension. The vessel wall tension will be a product of pressure and radius of the vessel wall. So, if we have to maintain a steady constant blood flow, what is the necessity? The T, the vessel wall tension, has to be held constant so that the blood flow will be held constant in that organ. And therefore, if we have to hold the T constant in the face of increasing pressure, you know already we have said this, blood pressure is increasing, perfusion pressure is increasing, so P is increasing. What will be the requirement? R has to reduce to maintain the T constant. Therefore, radius of the vessel wall will have to decrease. That's the application of Laplace's law, and that is how, by decreasing the radius of the vessel wall in the presence of an increasing perfusion pressure, the wall tension T will be held constant, and thereby the blood flow will be held constant. That's the application of Laplace's law in the myogenic mechanism. And decrease in the radius R, that means vasoconstriction. So, increase in the pressure, there will be vasoconstriction, and the wall tension will be held constant. So, that's a myogenic mechanism. Well, it is autonomous, as already I have mentioned it. It is independent of the neural or hormonal humoral mechanisms. I have said it already, the local blood flow regulation or autoregulation is particularly visible in those, or is particularly present in those organs which have a less of a neural supply or less of a neural regulation. That's one part. And particularly myogenic mechanism, it is independent of any neural or humoral mechanisms. I mean, they may be working, yet independent of or regardless of whether they are working or not, local blood flow will be maintained by this local myogenic mechanism. So, that's one theory, how autoregulation happens. The other theory, which has been historically called Bernays hypothesis, is the metabolic theory or metabolic hypothesis. It says increased metabolism and increased oxygen consumption within the organ, there will be increased ATP breakdown, and you know ATP breakdown will lead to ADP formation, AMP, and finally adenosine remains. And this adenosine, being the vasodilator, it will increase the blood flow, it will cause vasodilation and the blood flow will increase. So, this is the metabolic theory. It says there is increased oxygen demand to a particular organ, and increased metabolic breakdown or metabolic requirement has increased. Then the blood flow increases in parallel to that, and what it says is increased metabolism leads to increased breakdown of ATP. If the ATP is broken down, ADP is formed, adenosine diphosphate, then adenosine monophosphate will be formed. one more phosphate removed, and finally adenosine remains. Adenosine is a vasodilator. In most of the vascular beds, it causes vasodilation. So then it will cause vasodilation locally in that particular organ, and the blood flow to that organ will increase. So that's the metabolic theory. There are other potential candidates that that can also cause vasodilation. For example, CO2, H+, lactic acid, potassium ions even. CO2, H+, lactic acid, they are particularly seen in the skeletal muscle autoregulation. You know, I've mentioned it just now that skeletal muscle is performing an exercise. How is it that the blood flow can be increased locally? Yes, it is possible. Exercising muscles, they would generate carbon dioxide, or they would generate anaerobically the lactic acid or H+. And these are vasodilators. So they will leak out of the cells, the skeletal muscle cells, and they will dilate the blood vessels locally. The blood flow will increase locally. So that's this is the metabolic theory about autoregulation. Or even potassium ions are known to be the vasodilators. So in cerebral blood flow, coronary blood flow, potassium ions also known to play the role of autoregulation. These two are the important theories which have been universally accepted. Apart from that, there are two more theories or mechanisms for the autoregulation. One is tissue pressure. So if there is a change in the tissue pressure, it may regulate the blood flow itself. How? This also is an interesting postulate or interesting theory. So even let's have a look at this. Let's say increased pressure to an organ, or rather increased systemic blood pressure and therefore increased perfusion pressure to an organ, and therefore increased blood flow, right? Now, this increased pressure includes, or it causes, increased hydrostatic pressure. Increased hydrostatic pressure, capillary hydrostatic pressure will increase. And therefore what happens is, there is more leakage of fluid out of the capillaries. I have discussed in one video the Starling's equilibrium and the Starling's forces that cause movement of fluid in and out of the capillaries. So capillary hydrostatic pressure is a force that pushes the fluid out of the capillaries. And here what happens is increased blood pressure and increased perfusion pressure in that organ. The blood flow has increased. More fluid has leaked out of the capillaries. So let's say if this is a tissue and there are capillaries within the tissue, these are the capillaries. Now more and more fluid leaks out of the capillaries into the interstitium, and because more and more fluid is leaking out of the capillaries into the interstitium, that tissue pressure will increase. You will have to imagine this, that fluid is leaking out into the interstitium, into the tissue. So tissue pressure is increasing. What is the result of that? Because the tissue is kind of swelling up, slightly, therefore the vessels will be cut off, the arterioles will be cut off. Imagine that the tissue mass is slightly increasing because of that fluid that has leaked out. And let me tell you here, this theory will be more applicable to the organs which are encapsulated, very closed and capsulated type of organs. In those organs, there is hardly any scope for expansion of the tissue, right? Naturally. So therefore, when the fluid leaks out and there is no scope for the tissue to expand, then that encapsulated organ will cause cutting off of these vessels. The vessels, the arterioles will be compressed because of that capsule which could expand only this much. So it cuts off the arterioles and the blood flow will be cut off. You got to imagine this, that swollen tissue, and therefore it has cut off the arterioles. Not a complete cut off. It's not as if there would be zero blood flow after that, but yes, arterioles will be narrowed, arterioles will be constricted, and the blood flow will reduce. So what was our starting point? Increased pressure, therefore increased blood flow. It reverted back to normal by a decrease in the blood flow in this manner. So this is seen in organs like kidney, or more of encapsulated organs. That's one more theory related to the autoregulation. So these are some of the theories related to the autoregulation. There is also flow dependent dilation which is seen in the arteries and arterioles. So in summary, this is what is meant by autoregulation of blood flow. What you need to remember is that some organs, they have to maintain their blood flow irrespective of changes in the blood pressure. So after the change of blood pressure, initially the blood flow in those organs will change, but it will instantly, within a minute's time, it will come back to the original level, and it will be held constant even though the pressure is changing, or pressure has changed, the pressure has increased and remains elevated. The blood flow will come back to normal and will remain normal. So that is the concept of autoregulation. There are two theories, myogenic stretch mechanism and the metabolic theory. Adenosine is the main ligand over there, but there are CO2, H plus, lactic acid, K plus, etc. So that in a nutshell was about the autoregulation of blood flow.